It's the 7-Minute Drill, a fast-paced and fun conversation about common orthopedic topics and solutions with Dr. John Urse. Brought to you by
Ted's Authentic Greek Salad Dressing and Marinade. It's healthy, gluten-free, and delicious. You can find Ted's in Dayton, Ohio at Dorothy Lane Markets, Health Foods Unlimited, and Dots Markets. That's Ted's Authentic Greek Dressing and Marinade. Thanks, Ted.
We would also like to thank
Stifel's GWR Group combines more than 65 years of experience helping high-net-worth clients consolidate, coordinate, and simplify their wealth planning strategies. The group has access to a full suite of resources to serve all of your financial needs. Email gwrgroup@stifel.com or call 937-353-2863 to speak to Guy, Brad, or Jeff Richardson. Stifel, Nicholas & Company, Incorporated.
Well, Dr. Urse, we are back for another 7-minute drill, but we have a new sponsor. Who is our new sponsor?
Well, Terry, we're happy to have Stifel GWR Group. There's some great financial consultants, and
I've heard a lot of good things about them.
Yep, a lot of our colleagues have them as consultants. They do all avenues of financial planning and management, so we're thrilled that they're helping us out with the 7-minute drill and
all right.
Bone and Joint Playbook.
So what are we talking about today? I think we're talking about concussions, right?
We are. It's the title today is it a concussion?
So what are the three things? We're going to boil things down to threes. What are the three things we need to know about concussions?
Well, we want to know what the symptoms are and how to recognize it, first of all. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The second thing, we're going to decide, are we really diagnosing a concussion? Is this what this is, or is this a bad migraine? So we want to make sure we don't label somebody as having a concussion, because then that affects how they feel or how other people may let them participate in a sporting event or an activity.
Okay.
And the third thing would be, what do you do about it? What's the treatment? What's the precautions so that the brain has time to recover from being concussed? And we're going to talk about that and how important that period of recovery is so that more injury to the brain doesn't occur later.
All right, let's start off. What constitutes a concussion, basically?
Well, it's mostly, as we know, a hit to the head or some type of blow from either a sporting event or an accident. And we also are pretty much aware now that it isn't always how hard a head gets hit or a body gets hit. It could be a body impact too, because what we found is angular shear, which is the angle that the head gets, much like a whiplash, that can be just as damaging as the amount of force to the head. So that's why we wear seat belts. That's why we try to avoid, torquing excessively in one direction our neck, because our spinal cord, and I've got a little picture of our brain.
He's got graphic aid. All right.
This aid is there because our neck comes up and our spinal cord are these little yellow and cord-like structures that go to our nerves. We talked about pinched nerves that affect the arm and legs, but our brain, and this is the back of a skull, is a solid bone. But inside, our brain matter is a softer material. It's almost like Jell-O, so that when the brain gets shaken up, even though the skull looks like it's fine, the inside may still be vibrating, much like that Santa's belly, right? The jelly when it wobbles. So that part can then lead to what we would hope would be a diagnosis. Well, what would someone be like if they may have had a concussion? Well, they might be dizzy. They might have a headache. They may be disoriented. They may not even be getting up right away. So they may be in on a field where they just aren't standing up after they made a tackle or got hit.
So is football getting the bad rap here?
Football's getting a lot of the rap because we're taking our most valuable asset, which is our brain, and repetitively banging it against some other body part. In the words of Jerry Seinfeld, we don't stop our skull-cracking activities. We just put a helmet on and keep doing them. So I don't think it's useful for us to repetitively hit our heads. Boxers, for instance, I mean, this damage to the head has a name, and I always promise you one long name for every podcast, but anything that's called dementia pugilistica can't really be that good. And pugilism is basically, pounding somebody else's head into oblivion. So hitting a soccer ball with your head is the same type of thing. Boxing, football, but also, if you're hitting a tree, skiing, I mean, these are not good things. So your brain needs to know that it's okay. And our job on the sidelines, and we've got a couple differences between men and women here. Women actually get more concussions than men, although the data isn't 100% true because some men probably don't report it, or they don't say, oh, I'm fine, and never get checked out. So
Correct.
That leads us to, there are differences obviously in the muscular strength of your neck, which fights a whiplash type injury or a shearing or what's called angular force to the brain. So when we look at why do these things develop, there is a few things someone on the sidelines can look for. And you could be the parent, you could be the coach, you could be the healthcare professional who's the only healthcare professional at the soccer game or pee-wee football game. And if you see somebody who has been, in a play and now they're on the ground, they're slow to get up, they look disoriented, or they start to waver and look imbalanced. We check these people out, and we want to err on the side of caution. You want to say, look, I want to ask you a few questions. The most serious parts of concussion are two things. Did someone lose consciousness, and did they have any amnesia or memory loss? So only about 10% or less of people are truly unconscious.
Okay.
So that isn't the best way to look at it. That's a major bell ringing in your head if you are knocked unconscious. But if you know somebody can't remember, the capital of Iowa, then, that's a pretty simple question, unless they never knew it to begin with. So most sports,
I brought you to play for that.
It sounds funny, but they actually ask people 3 or 4 questions before a season starts. And they go, my quarterback knows the capital of Iowa. He knows who the 48th president was. Oh, that hadn't happened yet. And they have a list of questions that person should know.
Okay.
So if they get hit or concussed, and they don't know the answers, it's like, well, you used to know that.
Sure.
That's a pretty simple question, your mom's maiden name. So we try to do our best. We like to err on the side of caution. It's better to take someone out of the game and at least observe them.
Right.
Because then if they have a little more of a delayed dizziness or wobbliness, or they're imbalanced with their walking, then we would err toward keeping them out of the game, getting a better exam, and then that leads to the diagnosis. So the diagnosis then has to be made by a more skilled professional. They would do an eye exam. They would perhaps.
What would they see when they look in the eyes?
Well, they may have a gaze that looks funny. They may have some blurred vision.
And how long is it after the accident or incident?
Well, it could be 5 minutes. It could be 30 minutes. And as you go, concussions are graded in severity, grades 1, 2, 3, 3 being worse. So if you've had a loss of consciousness or any temporary amnesia, that makes it a much more serious concussion, more of a grade 2 concussion.
Okay.
That extends how long you would keep someone out of sports or other activities after that. And it may be beyond a week. So the rule of thumb is if you really had your bell rung, you'd probably be out for a week from that activity. We want people to start doing things back in normal life within a day or two.
But is there a limited number of concussions I can have before I should just say, hey, I can't do anything?
Absolutely.
What is that number?
There is no number, and that's happened with some of the pro football players who've had a few. And the question is, do they want to risk another concussion when this could have longer term effects? And we know that there's some of these brain analysis things called CTE, where they've looked at autopsy reports of younger people who have had repetitive head injuries, and there's damage to the brain from repetitive trauma. So we don't ever want to get to that point. We know that in children under 14 who have repetitive injuries to their head may have what are called cognitive defects later in life, more so than someone who waited till they were 14 to play more contact sports. So maybe we nudge our activities that are detrimental to our brains to a little older age group. But again, it's hard when everybody's in these youth sports.
So let's say I've been diagnosed with concussion. They did whatever test they were going to do to me. What do I do? I mean, is there something I can do to help myself? Or do I just not do anything activity?
Well, we have a couple of
we got visual aids,
and we're going to show a little treatment slide.
All right, and I'll put this up, by the way.
There are effects, things that you would treat the headache with just simple Tylenol. There are supportive measures, fluids, but the main thing is to be checked out by a competent, mostly a neurologist. We're thankful to Dr. Doug Pugar. He's going to come on later for a more extended
He's a great guy.
concussion discussion.
Yep.
And he has given us a few of the slides today, but a good neurologist or a good medical exam should clear you to go back to activities. And that's the most important thing, is when should I play? I'll just use one example. Sidney Crosby, who's a pretty famous hockey player, had his second concussion in the same 6-week period, I believe, a few years ago. He was out the rest of the year. That was it. They shut him down, playing great now for the last 5-6 years. But there are serious effects and ramifications of either post-concussion syndromes or what's called second concussion syndrome within a certain time of the first one. So it's always better to err on the side of...
Didn't the Miami quarterback have, go in and get hit real hard, then he went back in and got hit hard? I thought there was an incident
and again, they asked him, well, do you want to keep playing? And you said, is there a magic number of concussions? The answer is nobody knows that answer. That's not a decision a doctor makes.
Right.
That player has to decide, is that something I'm going to do or not? So I think the key here, if we wrap up a short segment here, we have 3 things we want people to know. What are the symptoms? I might be dizzy, I might have a headache. They may be a little different between men and women. There may be some disorientation of gait. There may be some confusion or amnesia of facts or information. We want to know, how do we diagnose it? We want to make sure it is a concussion. We don't want someone to be labeled when they have a migraine or a headache that they've got a concussion. They might need treated for a headache problem, which is a whole nother avenue of talks. And then the third thing would be, what do we do to prevent another injury to the brain, because this is our most valuable asset. And again, as we look at this model of a skull, that inside of the brain can still be vibrating much like a tuning fork. And until it stops wobbling, that is when the brain is quieted down to where it can go back to some normal activities. And we don't want people to get a stigma over the fact that they've had one. We want them to be cautious going forward with further activities.
All right, so this has been a 7-minute drill with Dr. John Urse. And is there anything you want to leave them with, one last thought about this, if you have kids who are playing sports?
Yeah, I would be, you know your children just like you know your animals and your friends. If they aren't right, if they don't look right, something's not right. Always err on the side of caution. Keep them away from an activity. Life is a marathon; it's not a sprint. So we want to make sure what's good for them, in not just the short term, but the long term.
Okay, so let's thank our sponsors again, who are
Ted's salad dressing. Ted's Greek salad dressing is
Ted's.
also available online now at tedsaladressing.com. And our new sponsor, Stiefel GWR Group, and we're pleased to have them on board.
All right, well, this has been the 7-Minute Drill with Dr. John Urse. We'll be back again soon with another episode of the 7-Minute Drill. I'm Terry O'Brien. We'll see you all real soon. Thanks.